The night he left, Caleb didn't shout, didn't throw my phone, didn't do any of the things my friends later said proved he was chill, and probably didn't even care that much. He did something worse. He put the spare key on the kitchen counter, the one with the little orange flow tie attached because we kept losing it at the lake, and he said, "I don't think you know what respect looks like, Marissa." Then he took the toolbox from under the sink, the jacket from the hook, and the dog-eared copy of The Hobbit that lived permanently on our coffee table like a coaster we were both oddly protective of. He left the plants, the couch, the framed photo from my cousin's wedding where I look fantastic and he looks like he's trying not to cry. He left me, too, standing there in a sequin top that scratched my arms every time I breathed, holding a red cup and a smile I didn't know what to do with now that the audience was gone. I had decided to host just a small thing, a phrase that is almost always a lie. It started as a game night because I was trying to be the fun girlfriend again, to soften how much I'd been snapping at him about the way he folded towels and the way he parked too far from the curb and the way his Saturday runs turned into long, quiet afternoons away from me. We invited 8 people, 12 came. The group was a clumsy mix. My co-workers from the salon, the barista I bonded with over true crime, 2 of Caleb's running buddies who had never set foot in a room where charcuterie board wasn't pronounced defensively, and Zach, my longtime friend who texts me memes at 2 a.m. Like we are still 22 with roommates and paper-thin walls. Caleb worked the morning shift at the fire station that day and promised he'd be home by 8. He is that kind of man. A promise is a small, sober thing you put in your pocket and check with your fingers until you get there. He texted me at 7:41, on my way. Need anything? I texted back, ice. And maybe limes? I added a heart I didn't mean. The doorbell rang at 7:55 and everyone poured in, noisy and glossy. Somewhere between refilling chip bowls and picking a playlist that everyone would like, I decided I didn't want to be the kind of woman who waits for her boyfriend to make the party good. I wanted to be the party. There's a moment in every night where you can feel yourself lean toward the version of you the room will reward. I felt it when Zach arrived with a 6-pack and that grin he wears like trouble on layaway. He hugged me, lifted me, said, "Damn, Riss, you look rich." I laughed too big and said, "I am rich." In attention, which was mostly a joke and partly a confession. He plopped into the armchair with the broken recliner lever and patted his knee like a cartoon villain. "Come on," he said when someone raised a phone for a story. "Give the people what they want." I rolled my eyes and perched on the arm. Everyone booed.
Boo. Commit.
I don't know what I thought the endgame was. Maybe I thought it would make the part of me that feels invisible when Caleb and his friends talk about Miles' splits flicker back to life. Maybe I thought it's only funny if it looks reckless. I slid onto Zach's lap for 3 seconds. It was the kind of sit you do when you're posing for a picture and your muscles aren't convinced this counts as resting. He put his hands up like he was being arrested. Someone squealed. The video captured my smile in that angle I like and Zach's face, turned toward my hair like it had a radio in it. The room laughed. I felt the warm click of being seen, which is a terrible kind of warmth because it fades with the next video. I hopped off. I raised my cup. I said something about how we were all going to die one day, so we should take silly pictures while we have knees that still bend. I thought I'd nailed it. I didn't notice the door opening. Caleb stood there holding a grocery bag with limes and a block of ice that was already sweating through its paper. He saw me on Zach's lap, saw Zach's hands in the air, saw the faces turn toward us like sunflowers. He didn't drop anything. He didn't make a scene. He set the bag on the entry table and said, "Hey." A few people said it back. He took off his boots and lined them up next to the others. He moved through our living room with that careful way he has, making himself take up less space when people are in it who don't know him well. I thought, uncharitably and stupidly, that he should be funnier about this. You can feel a party shiver when the story changes. It shuddered, then adjusted. I went toward him, chirpy and overbright. "We were being ridiculous," I said, like preemptive PR. He nodded and kissed my cheek. Dry, polite. "Looks like it." He carried the ice to the kitchen. He unwrapped it. He placed it in the sink and beat it with the wooden mallet we keep for such suburban emergencies. He put the limes in the bowl with the lemons. He set the knife down with too much care. I followed him. "It was for a video," I said. "You know Zach?" He said, "I do." He looked at me like I'm both stranger and something he could draw from memory. "In our house?" he asked. This is what I remember, because his voice didn't rise on the last word. It landed there like he'd been walking all day. I said the line I had ready for him, the same line I'd been road testing on TikTok comments for months. You're being insecure. It was a joke. I said it like a diagnosis. I said it like I was the rational one, and he was the flare-up. He wiped his hands on a dish towel. I'm not insecure, he said. I just don't like it. You don't like what? I asked, playing stupid because stupid is easier than wrong. He tilted his head toward the living room.
That.
We could have had the conversation there. Real voices, actual words. But I wanted the room on my side. I walked back into the living room. Caleb's mad. I sat in Zach's lap. I announced, turning it into a public inquiry like the jury was here, and the verdict could be crowdsourced. People laughed in the way people do, when they are relieved it's not about them. One of my coworkers, who is deeply single and treats my relationship like a TV show with too many seasons, said, OMG, it's not 1950. It's a lap. Zach said, Bro, it was a joke. I can sit on your lap if it makes you feel better. The room laughed again. I thought I'd won, because laughs are a kind of scoreboard if you don't look too hard. Caleb stood in the kitchen doorway, the towel twisted between his hands, absorbing the noise. He said, I'm going to bed. Someone booed. I said, Oh, come on. Don't be controlling. I regret the word every day that has come after it. It hit his face like something thrown, but not hard enough to leave a mark anyone can see later. He nodded once and walked down the hall. I felt heat in my chest and the petty urge to prove a point to people who would not think about me by Sunday. I put my arm around Zach's shoulders for a photo. I took a shot of tequila I did not need. The party moved on, because parties always do when the person who feels something insists they don't. I went to bed at 2 when the room had thinned and the floor was sticky. Caleb lay on his side, his breathing a performance of sleep. I brushed my teeth, made too much noise with the water, climbed into bed without climbing down into myself. We have to talk, I whispered, because night makes everyone a coward. He said, Tomorrow. I huffed.
Feeny.
But it was a joke and you made me look like some bad person in my own home. He didn't answer. I turned my back and looked at the blue light from the charger, like a star we both hated. He was up early. He works weird shifts and even on his days off, his body keeps the hours of emergencies. I heard the kettle, the clink of a mug, the creak of the back door. I stayed in bed and rehearsed being right. I composed a rolling speech about trust and how men use that word to mean comfort with whatever I do. I told myself I would not apologize for a thing that had no intent to harm. I told myself intent mattered most. I tell myself lots of things that don't hold up to daylight. When I walked into the kitchen, the key was on the counter. The toolbox was by the door. He had taken his jackets from the hook, leaving 2 empty spaces that looked exactly like leaving looks. He didn't even wear the jackets that often. He runs hot, always has. Seeing the absence made my throat itch. What are you doing? I asked, performing calm. Going to stay at my brother's for a bit, he said. You can have the place for the month. The lease is up at the end. We'll talk about the rest later. You can't just abandon me, I said. He blinked. I'm not abandoning anything. I'm stepping out of a house where I feel disrespected. It was a joke, I said, because I had nothing else. He nodded. Maybe to you. To me, it was a choice. I followed him to the door, words tripping over themselves to get to him first, each of them the wrong shape. You're making this a big deal because you feel threatened by Zach. He said, I feel threatened by a version of you that needs strangers to validate disrespect. I wanted to say I don't, but I didn't like the sound of the lie in my mouth. You're being controlling, I repeated because it was all I had. He said, asking for respect is a boundary, not control. He picked up the toolbox, the one he uses to fix everything I break without meaning to. He opened the door. I'll check on the plants next week.
He left.
I stared at the key and thought about how people on the internet make this sound glamorous. Dramatic stories, the man who couldn't handle your light. I didn't feel bright. I felt like a flicker in a building with bad wiring. In the hours after he left, I cleaned because that is what I do when my brain is a swarm. I scrubbed the cups, gathered the abandoned jackets, rescued a wedge of cheese from the couch cushions. I deleted the video from my story. Too late. It had already been screen recorded and sent to Caleb's running group, then to the girlfriends who run with them sometimes and want to know why he bowed out of their Sunday trail. The internet is terrific at math and spite. My DMs were a mix of queen behavior and you did him dirty. I cried when a woman I barely know messaged, "You're better than this," because she had the audacity to believe it. Zach texted around noon. "You good?" I said I was. He sent a blurry pic of a burger and wrote, "Want me to come over?" I looked at the word me until it lost meaning. I told him no. He replied, "Just say the word if firefighter boy wants to have a feelings off." I thought about how easy it would be to script myself as the kind of woman who chooses chaos and calls it freedom. I thought about Caleb's face when he said, "In our house?" and realized I had cheated that question. Our house isn't a building. It's a promise. I had made a joke out of one to prove I could still get other promises. In the evening, I called my mother because sometimes I still pretend I have the kind of mother who tells me I didn't do anything wrong. Mine did not. She sighed, and I could hear her drop into the chair near the window. She calls the listening chair. "Do you want me to tell you it wasn't that bad?" she asked gently. "Yes," I said. "I can't," she said. "If your father sat a woman on his lap in our living room, I'd have set the house on fire. And if I did it, he would have left me in the ash." "It was 3 seconds," I said. "It was a message," she said. "He heard it." "Are you going to hear his?" I hated that she was right more than I hated being wrong, which is a sentence I could probably take to therapy. Over the next week, I performed a kind of restorative virtue. I texted Caleb an apology that started too long and then became simple. "I'm sorry I disrespected you in our home. I understand if you need space." He wrote back, "Thank you." I asked if we could talk. He said, "Not yet." I sent a long message to Zach telling him to back off and that I needed the room to not include his favorite joke anymore. He replied, "Wow, okay." He unfollowed me. It hurt my pride more than anything else. I threw the sequin top in a donation bag. I booked a session with a counselor I found through an app that showed me 8 women with earnest smiles and plants in their offices. The one I picked asked me what I was trying to prove when I sat down. I said, that I could still choose me. She said, "Maybe you chose strangers." I cried into a tissue with a horrible texture. She gave me homework. Write down 5 moments where I watched Caleb choose me in public. I filled 2 pages without trying. The least complicated things. It was in both our names because we thought adulting meant putting both signatures on things that mattered. In our city, breaking early comes with a fee that felt like a punishment designed for grown-ups who can't keep their promises. Caleb offered to eat half. I offered to eat all of it. He said no. Gently, like he knew what I was trying to pay for. He offered to move his things out on a day I wasn't there. I asked to be there anyway. He said okay. He came on a Tuesday with his brother and the truck. He packed his books, his race medals that hang on a nail in the hallway like tin so they don't look like boasting, his drawers of base layers and socks that are somehow all gray, but all different. He left the plant he brought home from a station fundraiser because he said it seems to like me better. He left 2 mugs because he said he already is too. He stood in the doorway and looked at the room the way you look at a place that knows too much about you. "I don't hate you," he said. I said, "I know." It was the kindest thing either of us had said in weeks. That Friday, I saw him on a run when I went to pick up takeout. He was with a woman I recognized from his group, tall and all legs, the kind of athletic that looks like a choice instead of a punishment. They didn't touch. They laughed. He looked happy without being performative about it, which is worse than the kind of happy you can dismiss, because it's clearly curated. I went home and ate lo mein straight from the carton and watched old videos of us on my phone like an anthropologist studying the rituals of a tribe that went extinct. My friends had opinions. Emily said he was old-fashioned.
"It's not cheating," she said.
It was a lap. Maya said I'd embarrassed him in his own house, and he was right to step away.
"He told you who he is," she said.
You told him who you are. Both things can be true and still leave you standing in a doorway with a bag of frozen peas you don't remember buying. My boss at the salon didn't weigh in. She just shuffled my schedule so I could have Tuesday afternoons off for therapy, which is how you know someone loves you without using that word. The counselor asked me to write the story from Caleb's point of view. I rolled my eyes hard enough to see myself. Then I did it. It read like this. I came home to the woman I built routines with, sitting in another man's lap in the living room I pay half for, in front of people who know my face because she posts it. I didn't say anything because the room didn't belong to me anymore. She told me I was insecure when I said it hurt. She made my boundary into a character flaw. I left because staying would have taught her that if she makes me small enough, I will shrink to fit. Reading it out loud scalded me. The counselor didn't gloat. She nodded. What does he win by leaving? She asked. Himself, I said, and that was the first time I said it without bitterness. A month later, we met for coffee to talk logistics. The security deposit, the dog we kept saying we'd get, the furniture neither of us could really afford alone. I wore a sweater that didn't scratch me. He wore that navy hoodie that makes him look like he thinks before he speaks. We went through the practicalities like grown-ups who had rehearsed. We didn't talk about laps or jokes or Zach. He looked at me over the rim of his mug. I hope you're okay, he said. I nodded. I will be, I said, because I had started to believe it in the small moments. The quiet evening with a library book, the new rule about my phone staying in the other room after 10, the way my hands didn't shake with the urge to post something every time I felt unseen. At the end, I asked him if he wanted to try again. I did it softly, without the sales pitch I had prepared. He took a breath like people do before running into a cold lake. I don't, he said. I forgive you. But I don't want to live in a house where I have to argue that a boundary is a boundary. I nodded until my head hurt. Thank you for not making me the villain, I said, which is the kind of sentence you say when you still want to turn the narration in your favor. He smiled a little. You don't need my permission for the story, he said. Just maybe learn how to tell it without an audience. Then he hugged me, light and brief, and left smelling like detergent and early mornings. 3 months later, I moved into a smaller place with thinner walls and neighbors who fight about laundry coins like the economy depends on it. I adopted a tired cat from the shelter who insists on sleeping on my head like a bad hat. I work, I run small errands, I say yes less. Zach texted twice the first week in my new place. I didn't answer either. He stopped eventually, because attention goes where it is fed. Caleb posted a picture of 3 runners after a race, their arms around each other's sweaty shoulders, the caption simple, grateful. The tall woman is in it. Her smile looks earned. I liked the photo, and then unliked it, because I don't want to be that presence in his notifications anymore. Sometimes I rewatch the 3-second video I saved in a folder called Lessons, not because I'm a masochist, but because looking away is how I got here. It's blurry. It's silly. It's nothing and it's everything, depending on whether you are in the room as a spectator or as the person whose promise is getting joked about. When I feel myself reaching for the dramatic line, the viral moment, the clapback, I play it, then I remember the key on the counter, the orange flow tie, the sentence. I don't think you know what respect looks like. I am learning. Slowly. Awkwardly. Not to earn him back. That is not a prize to be won, but to be a woman who doesn't confuse the sound of laughter with the weight of love. There's no twist where he shows up with flowers and a soft, forgiving speech. That would be a different kind of lie. The truth is quieter and harder. He wins by choosing not to negotiate his boundary down to something he can live with. He wins by not turning into an amateur prosecutor in the trial of my character. He wins by moving out rather than moving the goalposts. He wins because, when a crowd tried to tell him what he should feel in his own home, he didn't audition for their approval. He picked up his toolbox, left the plants, and kept his self-respect. The lesson is not that I lost a good man because of 3 seconds. It's that 3 seconds can say out loud what you've rehearsed in your head so long you forgot it was cruel. If you want the practicalities that make it believable, we split the lease termination fee. The landlord kept 1/4 of the deposit for deep cleaning, which I do not doubt we owed. We each took the furniture we had paid for on our own cards. I kept the couch because it was mine. I covered the rest of the last month's rent because I was the one who wanted quick resolution. We did not block each other. We muted each other's stories. This is what adult endings look like: receipts, calendar invites, keys left on counters. Not because anyone is performing restraint, but because you run out of ways to dress up what happened. On Saturday mornings now, I walk by the trail where his group meets, not to see him, but to remember that people do things for reasons that aren't attention. I get coffee from the place where the barista knows my name, but not my life. I sit on a bench with my bad hat cat in her carrier beside me, and I try to be the kind of person who would be good to come home to. A person who can hold a joke without turning the whole room into a stage, who can be seen by one pair of eyes and call it enough. I am not there yet. But I am closer than the woman in the sequin top, laughing too loud while someone who loved her stood in the kitchen doorway and asked, quietly, for respect. I keep the orange flow tie on my own key now. It bumps against my thigh when I take the stairs, an absurd little reminder that some things are meant to help you avoid sinking. When I get tempted to frame the story as he couldn't handle me, I think of how easily he handled everything else. Flames, sirens, split-second decisions. And how he refused, finally, to handle me disrespecting him. He wasn't insecure. He was sure. I'm learning that's what security looks like, and that it doesn't need a room full of people to prove it.